Hello, Meoni here, and welcome back to another news video, this time looking at the first of presumably many new interviews with Naoki Yoshida, the producer and director for Final Fantasy XIV. This then covering the first of many Japanese outlets that would be putting out interviews. Full credit, obviously, and a link at the top of the description for this article on 4Gamer.net, who obviously, this is their interview. We're just going to read through this. This is badly Google translated, so just bear in mind I don't have somebody to translate stuff for me, but we can get the basic gist of things anyway. I think Google Translate has come a long way from its original roots, with only a few minor hiccups. So the first thing they want to talk about is the reaction to Golden Legacy, which is the Japanese translated name for Dawntrail 7.0 expansion, and of course, how FanFest went down. So first of all, 4Gamer asks about that, the reaction to Fan Festival 2023 in Las Vegas, to which Yoshi P says, it hasn't completely disappeared, but now that the coronavirus pandemic has subsided, he says, it's been a long time since we've held an event in real life. Many people attended, and I think it was the most exciting event compared to past fan festivals. All in all, it was difficult to implement and manage this fan festival, but all of the staff members said in common, physics is great after all. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean, really. And my honest opinion is that we were really glad that we were able to hold it. So aside from all of the, difficulties in the current situation of the world must carry on, basically. And they're happy that they pulled it off. In the trailer music for Golden Legacy, or Dawntrail to us, which we announced, we had completely changed the atmosphere of the game, and sound director Masayoshi Soken was wondering just before the song's debut, will this song be accepted? He says, I was worried. I'm fine because I'm starting to feel like this is a summer vacation, but I'm relieved to hear from people all over the world that they're looking forward to a new adventure. I suppose putting it into the mindset of a producer and director, as well as the sound director with Masayoshi Soken as well, it is a big leap in a different direction musically than, typically they would have for an expansion, and they have set the bar in increments with every single expansion in a different way, so I think overall it's kind of natural to be apprehensive about that, but it's interesting to see that that's exactly how they feel. Next up, 4Gamer asks, in the patch 6.x series, the story revolves around the Void, or the 13th world, but I had the impression that the story would change dramatically with Golden Legacy, or Dawntrail to us again. Yoshi P says, actually, we were gradually dropping scenes that make you wonder if this is a subtle foreshadowing. I haven't made it very easy to understand, but I think you can feel it from around patch 6.4. Therefore, if you play the main storyline for 6.4 again, I think you'll have a new realization that follows Golden Legacy and asks, is this really possible? Of course, all stories will be connected from patch 6.5 onwards, but patch 6.5, the main story update, is divided into part 1 and part 2. In terms of schedule, after watching the main storyline of 6.5 part 1, we will introduce Fan Festival 2023 in London, which is October the 21st and 22nd, and Fan Festival 2024 in Tokyo 2024. So there will be a keynote speech on January the 7th, January the 8th, and the story will continue in patch 6.5 part 2. Yeah, basically, January, we don't know the date at the moment. I think that's a translation error. Will be the second part of patch 6.5, which is known as 6.55, which continues the storyline, which will lead us into Dawntrail, but also have stuff like Hildebrand, the final weapon enhancement series, the tool enhancement series, stuff like that. Yoshi P continues, I think it's easier to understand if you look back at the story development for Jet Black Villains, but if you look at the trailer alone, you'll be transported to a world you don't really understand. Even though the war continues in Crimson Liberator, which is Stormblood, obviously, I was in a state where I was fighting an angel-like creature. From there, through several fan festivals and patches, the story gradually became connected. Up until Jet Black Villains, which is obviously, Shadowbringers, we followed that style every time. So I think you'll enjoy it even more if you see that we're returning to that style in this version of Golden Legacy or Dawntrail. So basically, like, it's gone like full circle in development, or at least that's what I'm getting from that paragraph. 4Gamer says, so in 6.5, the story surrounding the Void will be completed in part 1, and the story that will lead into the expansion will unfold in part 2. Yoshi P says that's the way it is. However, the 13th world is in a situation in which the soul has lost its home due to the flood of darkness, so I don't think it would be possible to resolve all of that in one patch. Although the first world has stopped the flood of light, I believe that it will take time, as not everything has returned to normal. This is the starting point, or 0, of light, and is somewhat connected to the core, so I would be happy if you could take a look at that in part 1, he says. So basically there's going to be lots of foreshadowing of what's to come in the future, and they're not just going to be able to end the Void saga in just one patch, but they're going to attempt to resolve at least the majority of the plot points, but the world itself will still need some enhancement in the future and some more storyline, presumably. 4Gamer says in the screenshot that was already released, there was a scene where Zero and Lean, they say, yeah, let's call her Reen, were walking side by side in the Crystarium, and it was a surprising scene for players who knew this situation. Yeah, so where this is, the Crystarium, obviously. Yoshi P says, in terms of the story, as we move forward in the story of the 13th world, I think you can immediately understand from that scene, I see, that's why I have to go there. On the other hand, if Zero was able to go to the first world, I would be curious to see if Akatsuki and other members could also go, so other scions, but that is clearly explained in the story, so if you watch it you'll understand, you should be able to get it. So there's a reason why Zero, specifically, as well as your character, can access the first, but that does not necessarily mean that the other scions, for example Ishtola, who would like nothing more than to return to the first, to find a connection, it doesn't necessarily mean that connection is open. So yeah, presumably that's because of a link to the Void, presumably, right? But yeah, they also show some images here from obviously 6.5 and both the dungeon, the Lunar Subterrane, and the new trial. 4Gamer says, I'm looking forward to seeing what the content will be like. By the way, speaking of the main scenario, in 6.5, all instance dungeons conquered in the main scenario will be compatible with content support or duty supporters. What I'm curious about is how support will be handled for events such as annihilation battles where 8 players can play together. Annihilation battles, that is a great term. So for trials and things like that. Yoshi P says, this was the case with the battle for the destruction of Heidelin. Right, so when you fight off against Heidelin with the 8 players, which was built in the scenario from the beginning. If the members who stand up to stop despair don't have the experience of properly overcoming the trials of Heidelin, the scenario will be a letdown, he said, making a request to the battle content side of the team that they managed to respond to. Its content. Technically, it is possible to support the duty support for 8-person content, but the gimmick will need to be reworked for most content. Therefore, if we were to support 8-player duty support content, I think we would have to recreate it as a 4-person content. Final Fantasy XIV Eorzea, A Realm Reborn's normal game of the Beast God. Like the earlier stuff, right? So A Realm Reborn's primals are 4-player content. But if it's in that form, supporting content supporters will not be that difficult. So basically the trials and tribulations of the 8-player stuff is made easier if you just do it with 4. So that's probably the direction they'll go with reworking stuff maybe in the future. He continues, however, in the scene where the Pillar of Light appears in Jet Black Villains, the Warrior of Light is summoned from a world with separate dimensions, which is created using a combination of the Content Finder and Scenario. I thought it was a little strange that NPCs would come out of there, even in Dawn Moon Finale. I really want the Battle of the End to be fought by 8 Warriors of Light, and I think it would be difficult to accommodate all content supporters. So basically, there are some limitations with the 8-player duty support system, which they're still obviously overcoming internally. But personally, outside of this, I personally think that the 8-player duty support system for Heidelin was great with the Truss. I thought that was great. I'd love to see more. 4Gamer continues, the Jet Black scene is a scene where the player is shocked and wonders, is that how they can connect to the content finder? However, it might be a bit different when NPCs appear. By the way, since the topic of the final battle came up, I would like to ask, are there any plans to impose item level restrictions? Now this is a good question. Yoshi P says, as it stands now, the battle ends quickly, and it's a waste not being able to see the final scene. We have heard your feedback, so we think it would be better to make adjustments. Thank you for your feedback. Yeah, this is a huge big deal. So a lot of the... I don't want to spoil it in case you've not done it. Obviously, we're not going to mention the names of the bosses, but that final battle, quote unquote, the final trial of the base expansion for Endwalker really does need to be looked at. And it seems they are going to be making that last a bit longer in the future, maybe scaling things back with item level restrictions and things, which is, I think most people would agree, a lot of the older content needs more item level restrictions to keep it relevant, especially when it comes to some of the older alliance raids as well. So yeah, there's definitely a bit of work to be done. 4Gamer says, next in 6.5, the third installment of the 24-person alliance raid, Myths of the Realm, will be implemented. Please tell us the highlights. Yoshi P says, compared to the past, Mythology of Eorzea, which they call it, has been created as a raid with a lot of character. It is also a story that was created mainly by the younger generation of staff during development. I'm already 50 years old this year. Congratulations, Yoshi P. You don't look a day over 30 personally. And the fantasy we read and grow up on when we were young is different from the fantasy of today's younger generation. Therefore, the approach is completely different and the characters are also different. I feel like the stories and lines that we wouldn't be able to draw are coming to fruition in Myths of the Realm. I think this third installment has the most beautiful world, and I think the story is satisfying as well. In a sense, this story is an epilogue to the Hydaelyn and Zodiac arc. If you watch it with that in mind, I think it will end on a very satisfying note. That's good. That is good, the way they've tied that in, and it is a big deal, right? Especially with what certain characters said at the end of the expansion currently about what we would find and the myths, literally Myths of the Realm. So 4Gamer continues, when it comes to 24-person alliance raids, I always look forward to the chaotic feeling of the first day of implementation. Yoshi P says it's really difficult to adjust the amount in that regard. As we revamp the content supporters, we are trying to unify the gimmick markers, and the Warriors of Light have accumulated a lot of experience points. So even if we say that there are 24 people for the first time, we'll make it easy to understand. It becomes easy. If there are many other people in the Alliance who are challenging for the first time, I guess, it will be easy. But if there are no other people in the Alliance, it will be so difficult that they've done it before, that you will be wiped out repeatedly. So we're struggling to balance that. That's true, actually. He continues, we have members from each development team who play casually, who come together to test the game. And even though we say casual, we are the development team, advertising team, and community team, so we are gradually getting better at it. Therefore, I always struggle with deciding where to start from when making the final adjustments. End quote. So that's a really big point. It is very hard to sort of get that first time experience and make that last, because as soon as people sort of learn the mechanics, it just becomes second nature and you just want to get the place cleared. Finding the balance of it being approachable on the first, I don't know. I think the way they do it is fine. I certainly wouldn't want it, in my opinion, to be dumbed down or made easier. I think that it's fun to get there the first week, and then after that you kind of enjoy just doing it regardless. But again, level sync, bringing that down and making it, more like that first time, I suppose, without the gear inflation, is the way to do that, especially for the older raids. Not sure about the newer ones though, but that's my opinion. 4Gamer continues, in the first place, if the player's skill of the person testing it is increasing. Right, okay. So yeah. And then Yoshi P says, yes, in the first week, I think the ideal difficulty would be to wipe the first time around the second boss, wipe the second time around the third boss, and still manage to clear the game despite being half destroyed at the end. Since this is the third edition, I thought it would be okay if it was a little bit more difficult. Ooh, interesting. I think it has a certain amount of texture, he laughs. I would like to let you know in advance that when it comes to 24-person alliance raids, the 3 bosses are the strongest, and if you can get through the 3 bosses, you can finish the 4th boss, i.e. the last one, comfortably. There's a reason why we made the 4th boss a little stronger. Yeah, it's to give you the sense of overcoming all odds, right? I mean, that should come as no surprise, at least to me as a reader here. But yeah, it is interesting to say that he's hyping up the difficulty. Let's see if that, goes to fruition. 4Gamer continues, I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of battle it will be. When it comes to accumulating player skills, I'm also concerned about the difficulty level of the Phantom Knights of the Round Table. Oh wow, that is such a great name. So for Thordan and the Knights 12. But the ultimate battle was a very difficult battle at the time. I have a memory. What would you think about the difficulty level? So for Unreal Thordan that's coming in this patch, when the ultimate was implemented, there was a wide variation in item levels. Oh, sorry, for the original, not the ultimate. So it may have felt difficult. That said, the content originally had a very well designed gimmick, and it was created to resemble Type 0. Interesting. So I think the difficulty level was quite high. A tank may guide the entire party while looking at the position of the outer eye, or there may be a phase where the tank simply avoids them from the beginning, or a tank may guide 2 enemies and release them, and a switch targets to attack based on buffs. It's a battle of destruction filled with the fun of conquering the content, so I'd be happy if you could try it while remembering those days. There are many people who have cleared the game by removing these restrictions, so for unsyncing, without worrying about that gimmick. So I think it's quite rewarding. I am personally reading this, bricking it when I'm thinking about doing Unreal Thordan. I was never very good at the original synchronized anyway. So, this is going to be interesting. I can't wait to see what that's like. Personally. 4Gamer continues. By the way, 6.4's Return of Hildebrand, the Mandeville family's superhuman strength was set up. And regardless of whether it's true or not, it was shocking. So if you haven't caught up with that storyline, that's a bit of a spoiler, I guess. Don't continue at this point. Yoshi P says in 6.4 you may have thought that the Mandeville family was an afterthought, but we won't do anything that would make people think that way. So please watch the conclusion before making your decision. There's a chance that Hildebrand will say, "That's what the punchline is," he laughs. We are having fun making it, so please look forward to it. Hey, that is the secret to content creation in general. And I imagine it would extend to game creation and designing. If you're not having fun, don't make that content. But they're having a lot of fun. And it does show. I personally have enjoyed the Hildebrand storyline thus far. 4Gamer says, understood. Another shocking thing was the announcement of a collaboration with Fall Guys. How will the hit judgment be done? Okay. Yoshi P says, we do not judge collisions between players, of course. Oh yeah, because there's no collisions between players. Of course, part of the fun of the game is to grab and get in the way, like in the original game. But in Final Fantasy, I have removed this. If you would like to enjoy those aspects, please try playing the original game Fall Guys. As for the map gimmick, we reused the original gimmick and put it together. Therefore, I think it's easier to understand if you imagine a battle with a gimmick in Final Fantasy XIV. Of course, we created some special judgments for Fall Guys, but at the testing stage, the speed at which the gimmicks were layered was so fast that no one would remain unless they played seriously. So we wanted to make it more casual. We are making strict adjustments based on what we want. So that's the first time they've properly talked about this. Essentially, any worries about collision between characters being enabled, you can throw it out of the window. It's still going to be like the jumping puzzles in the Gold Saucer, but you'll probably have like circles on the floor to avoid, and knockbacks and springboards and jumping puzzle sections and knockoff mechanics and things like that, and spinning things. So I'm personally really looking forward to this. Not even afraid to admit that I have played a lot of Fall Guys recently because of this announcement, and I'm really enjoying it. 4Gamer continues then, I'm looking forward to seeing what 14's Fall Guys is like. 6.5 is said to be implementing the 3rd edition of variant dungeons, but I have the impression that the span from the 2nd edition has been quick. Yeah, it has been pretty quick, I think. Yoshi P says it's been about 2 years now, but ever since we made the plan for 6.x series, the reason we were able to implement the variant dungeon this time so quickly is that one of the reasons why we were able to implement the variant dungeon so quickly is that the game designer who came to me from the old Final Fantasy variant dungeons has a structure in which is extremely easy to create. Also, in the Forbidden Land of Eureka and Southern Bosnian Front and Zadnor, created by Mr. Ozma, Makoto Nakagawa, the lead battle content designer. Big shout outs to him. There is a special action system which can be only used within that content. The big thing about it is that it's beautiful, and when you combine those things, you can develop smoothly. However, this time it will be implemented consecutively in patches 6.4 and 6.5, but it would be impossible to implement this like this every time. So I'd appreciate it if you could think of it as a content series that will be implemented periodically, like Alliance raids and 8-person raids. So yeah, every like 2 or 3 patches or so. That's understandable. Honestly, it was surprising to have 2 back-to-back like that, but they stuck to their original plan, which is to be admired, honestly. 4Gamer says, understood, so please tell us the highlights of this one. Yeah, that's true. We don't really know anything about this, do we? Like a lower island, I think it's called, or something like that. Yoshi P says, after all, your companion is Matosha, which obviously is, I can't remember his name from Stormblood. I keep calling him Sandal Hat for some reason. I'm not sure why I keep calling him that in my head. Anyway, so expect a variety of episodes to emerge. First of all, it is a retrieval of some foreshadowing that has been revealed so far about why Matosha ends up accompanying her in the first place and where she will go. So I think those who know the story will understand. It has a resort feel, but is similar to the atmosphere of Golden Legacy, so of Dawntrail. So I think it would be great if people could play it as a preview experience. Of course, there are plenty of puzzle-solving elements, and the world setting is also interesting. Also, we've heard that you want more rewards for another dungeon type 0. So we've, which is the Savage mode. So we've increased the rewards a little this time as a test case. Interesting. A lot of people will be interested about that. Overseas, there are many voices saying that they want equipment that increases the item level as a reward. But since it cannot be removed, we have prepared elements that are visually easy to show off. If this is the kind of reward you want, then I would like to think about it in this direction in the future. So I'd be happy if people are going into that Savage criterion can give me feedback. Very interesting. There has been a lot of feedback about the rewards being a little bit on the low side. I think that's fair to say. So it'll be interesting to see how they address that and what this means. So very, very excited to see with that with bated breath, honestly. Hopefully people are happy. I think these are great, by the way. The variant modes, they're so good. They're a lot of fun. 4Gamer continues, from now on I would like to ask you about each additional content regarding the weapon crafting of the Mandeville weapons. In the 6.x series it's been strengthened by exchanging 1500 Allegan tomestones. Traditional weapon production content was time consuming and labour intensive, such as going through Fates and instance dungeons and light stages. What kind of policy change was this? Also, will this policy be followed in 6.5? The real questions. Yoshi P says, when planning relic weapons, not just Mandeville weapons, the first thing we do is plan how the weapon will grow and how many hours it will take to complete. On the other hand, if you look at the current style of players, they are multi-job players. Looking at everyone's data, there are very few people who only just play one job. And I think it shows the really good points of the armory system. People are easily changing jobs to suit the content. In the past, the idea was that it would be okay if you just made one job, and the time calculation for the Zodiac weapon was set to 120 hours. Oh boy, really? But now that the range and amount of content is expanded, there is less time to devote to weapon production. End quote. Personally, I'm still on the edge of wanting to have that content to actually, to fill the time. It helped fill between patches, personally. That's my opinion. I never had a problem with the grind, but some people probably will agree with Yoshi P here, and that's totally fine. I guess it's just the nature of the ever-changing game and the way that things approach. But I will say that I did prefer, like, maybe not 120 hours investment per weapon, but I don't know, like 30, 40 hours a weapon. I thought that was pretty good content, honestly. It kind of added a bit more like, oh, wow, look at that person. They have that weapon. It's like they actually made a conscious decision. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments. But Yoshi P definitely seems to be on the mindset that the development team want to go in this direction, which is people using more jobs more frequently, interchanging between them, and making those stages a lot smaller. So there we go. 4Gamer continues, certainly there are many things you can do besides making weapons. Yoshi P follows up, in fact, in the feedback we received, we heard that once you start making weapons, that's the only thing you can do, and the data shows that in that case. There are a lot of people who chose not to make weapons. If you plan to have multiple jobs to produce items, it will take a toll on your inventory if you go around collecting special reinforcement items, and it will be difficult to tell how much you have strengthened. Therefore, we made it so that elegant tomestones that are released in any content can be accumulated naturally and used to strengthen weapons as long as you do what you want to do. Therefore, he says, this policy has not changed at this final stage. So if you are thinking that they were going to revert this, the final stage in 6.55 in January will also be about 1,500 tomestones. So there we go. At least we got an answer to that. Whether people agree with that or not, that's the way it's going to be done for the end of this expansion. Interesting. 4Gamer continues, I see, so the difficulty level is based on the premise of creating multiple weapons from the beginning. Yoshi says, of course, I also understand how to play the game, where the fun of developing your weapons comes from the effort and time you put into it. However, young people who play online games these days choose not to play unless it's easily available. However, as I mentioned earlier, if players are enjoying playing multiple jobs these days, I think our game design should be designed to reflect that. It is true that by changing this policy this time, players can strengthen their weapons through various jobs, which motivates players to play even more. On the other hand, there are also voices saying they want enhanced content or exclusive content for weapon production. It's a voice that never existed before. However, in the Save the Queen series, we created a system where weapons could be strengthened both inside and outside of the content, but in the end it came down to efficiency. For that reason, I'm worried about what to do with the next series. But the fact is that many players have strengthened the man of a weapon this time to the highest level ever. Yeah, well, okay. I get this, and also end quote, by the way. I get this, but my reflection on this is the only reason more people have completed a weapon this time is because it's so incredibly easy. You know what I mean? This doesn't take away the fact that this was a great feature, the Save the Queen series, not only because it added extra stages and a better feeling of enhancing the weapon as an option to do it. The optional way of doing it was nice to have because you introduced an entire piece of content that came with that added more stuff to it, new achievements, new titles. We got, exclusive raids, more difficult raids, exclusive mounts, new minions, new collectibles. Not having that this time did actually, I think, change the way that the game felt. And I would say probably towards the worse, in my own opinion. You might disagree. But I think the choice section is what should be the big focus, at least in my opinion, going forward, rather than going either way. But that's just, again, my opinion. Let me know what you think. That's a big topic. 4Gamer continues. On the other hand, Meoni tool, I'm not sure what that is, a crafted tool or tome weapon, which is also the same reinforcement content. was that the previous, are they talking about the resistance weapons? Maybe. Was at a fairly difficult level, even if a reinforcement to the 5th stage was completely prohibited. I'm not sure what they're saying here. Will it be difficult to strengthen the final stage in 6.5? Yoshi P says the research enthusiasm of all the players is amazing. If people with a certain level of equipment were able to do it easily with macros, I think top level people would be discouraged. So I feel like we're always fighting over the balance. This time, with patch 6.45, it feels like we've increased the difficulty a little, but we don't plan on making it any higher. So I guess I mean 6.55. That's a mistranslation, 655. Increased the difficulty a little. Maybe a few more times then, I guess. I don't know. 4Gamer says, I see. Since the game is conquered using macros, what? I don't know about that. The necessary specifications of the equipment are matched. The next question is that people are flocking to the Mana data center to play the Savage content. Are there any plans to take any measures? I don't know what they're on about here, sadly. Yoshi P says, I once created a mechanism to take measures, but a bug appeared. So even if I were to take countermeasures, it would be to offer Golden Legacy. This is a phenomenon that only occurs in Japan, and countermeasures are a problem. If I were to listen to everyone's opinions now, the quickest response would be close data center travel so it cannot be used. However, I feel that it's different if they are doing this for only the Type 0 players, Savage players. In fact, during development, we came up with the idea of closing Type 0 until it calmed down. But since it would move before closing, I don't think it would be a fundamental solution. However, there are some players who are successfully playing the world with data center travel, going beyond the boundaries of a logical data center, going to various places with friends, visiting housing and so on. So I think it's wrong to suffer inconvenience due to the ceremony. So I'm not really sure what this is talking about. Something to do with a server. We'll move on. 4Gamer says, since it coincides with the implementation of new content, you may want to get together on a data center trip and share a first look. However, if I go to another data center, I'm hesitant because I'm afraid I won't be able to return to Mana. Yoshi P says this is a problem that arises precisely because there is so much diversity and value. We've created a system that allows for cross-world matching, allows you to move between worlds, and is able to break through logical data centers and even physics. Okay. 4Gamer says, I think it's a difficult problem, but I have high hopes for the future. The Xbox Series X and S version was announced at the Fan Festival the other day. That release was not at the same time as Golden Legacy or Dawntrail, but rather earlier than that. What is the reason for that? Yoshi P says, if you release them at the same time, it's a major problem occurs. It will be difficult to tell whether it is a problem with Dawntrail or a problem specific to the Xbox version. In particular, this time, Dawntrail includes a lot of system updates, including graphic updates, so it'll be very difficult to determine which one is the problem. Therefore, the Xbox version will be held in open beta during 6.5x, so Xbox users will be able to play it, and we would like to release Golden Legacy with all the unique bugs fixed. Okay, 4Gamer says, understood. Finally, please give us a message to all the players. Yoshi P says, this year marks the 10th anniversary of the release of A Realm Reborn. I met all of the Warriors of Light again at the Fan Festival. I feel that I'm supported by all the players. The development of Final Fantasy, I'm very grateful. The Hydaelyn and Zodiac arc has been completed. The 6.x series has come to an end with 6.5 Part 1 and then Part 2, and the next adventure is about to begin. We will continue to do our best to provide players with even more excitement and an experience they have never had before. It is a time of change, but I'm sure I'll get tired of doing things conservatively, so I'm going to continue to take on new challenges as I move forward. I hope you can look forward to that as well. Also, new players will be able to play up to the Stormblood expansion through this free trial, and there are many new people who have played for 16 and are interested in 14, so they start playing. Many people have returned since the Fan Festival started, so I think now is a great time to start anew. There are actually some measures that have not been announced yet for the 10th anniversary, so please stay tuned for Final Fantasy XIV both inside and outside of the game. And that is the end of that interview. Once again, thank you to 4Gamer for asking some actually really good questions. And obviously to Naoki Yoshida, the producer and director for this fantastic game. Link in the description. Let me know what you think. Personally, I think the things to take from this is it's very interesting to see how they reacted to Dawntrail and the apprehensions. It's always nice to see that insider thing. A little hint on the future of 6.5 and what to expect. But most importantly, the way that content is being developed is based on a certain subset of the community, and as a result of that, it is changing depending on what, as we could paraphrase or indirectly quote, the younger generation is the main focus, which isn't necessarily the a bad way to go, but it is a reflection which some would see as a negative, especially when it comes to the content creation around the relic weapons. Whether or not you agree or disagree, I'm interested. So definitely write in the comment section. We might do a follow-up based on those messages, those comments you have, and thoughts and opinions, whether you are for the shorter content and just dumping tomes into something, if you're completely the other end of that extreme and you would like the original Zodiac weapon grind back, or if you're kind of in the middle and you want stuff like Zadnor and Bosja back, which I'm personally sat on that kind of fence, or if you prefer, the older style sort of Heavensward stuff. Which was your favorite relic grind, or relic progression, I should say, because not all of them were a grind, quite clearly. Anyway, much love. Thank you so much for watching this video or listening to it wherever you are. Hopefully this helped, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.